A simple woman was mocked for her thrift store parka, her duct-taped rifle case, and for being an older woman in a place built for defense heirs and elite soldiers. They called her Lost Cowgirl cosplay. A trainer joked he'd walk out on his head if she scored more than 5. Then she lay down, said nothing, and from 1,000 meters, fired 10 perfect bullseyes. The range went silent, and then they uncovered her name on the building. The clipboard trembled slightly as the staffer tried not to laugh. He didn't ask for ID, just clipped a badge marked "Visitor" to her coat and waved her through. A shooter leaning against a range bench tapped his friend and tilted his head toward her rifle case. The tape around the hinges had begun to peel. Someone filmed it. Another whistled. The caption under the live feed read, "Antique inbound." No one spoke to her directly. A round aluminum token skidded across the gravel and landed near her boot. On it in marker, someone had written, "Janitor shift." The coin stayed there. She stepped past it without pause. Up on the balcony, 2 instructors watched with arms crossed. One sipped coffee. The other said, just loud enough to carry, "Might be the first time someone brings a mop to the 1,000-meter line." Laughter rose like a low swell, not loud, just constant. She moved steadily through it. The announcer's voice cracked over the loudspeaker. Entry 9, now approaching guest shooter. No team affiliation. Open qualifier. The registration tablet had no name logged. Just mock entry 9 in bold red letters. A woman in tactical sleeves raised her phone and panned it toward the path. $5 says she doesn't clear the first shot. One of the younger shooters shouted toward the tower, "Hey, someone log her under historical reenactments." No one offered her a lane. She walked the path alone. Her boots were quiet over the packed gravel, but the air around her was sharp with amusement. A man near the score tower leaned forward and snapped a photo as she passed. His caption said, "Before the flop." She said nothing. A clipboard was held out toward her with an empty signature line. She signed it, 4 quick strokes. No questions asked. The staffer looked at the name, then looked at her. He didn't react, just stepped aside. She reached the firing platform and stopped. The mat was steel cold, weathered from years of recoil. The wind pressed across the far ridge and whispered down through the targeting lanes. She lowered her case, not rushed, not hesitant. The locks cracked open one at a time, first the left, then the right. She opened the lid and paused. The range was still laughing behind her. She lifted the rifle and began to load. She passed through the main lounge of Pinewood Training Field unnoticed. The walls gleamed with oil-finished walnut, broken only by trophy cases and mounted rifles under glass. Names were engraved in brass beneath each photo: retired champions, founding donors, decorated officers. Crystal tumblers rested on polished trays beside bottles of bourbon positioned like museum pieces. No one looked up as she entered. A junior marksman near the leather couches glanced at her over his shoulder. He nudged the man beside him and tilted his head. Did she get lost on the way to maintenance? The other smirked, but didn't turn. Bet. She's someone's aunt. Let her look around. She didn't stop. Her steps were steady over the polished concrete. Near the front stairwell, 3 instructors stood comparing trigger pull data on a shared tablet. One of them muttered, "We're letting just anyone walk through now." The hallway narrowed before opening into the archive gallery. It was lit with museum-style spotlights and lined with records, black and white photos of early range founders, their names etched beneath in uniform font. A display screen flashed performance statistics in a silent loop, nearby wind readings, shot groupings, trajectories. One of the plaques had been covered by a promotional banner for an energy drink sponsor. The banner was bolted into the wall across a single brass plate at waist height. The others shined. That one didn't. She paused there for one breath, then moved on. Upstairs, the long corridor that led to the viewing decks was filled with side displays: framed bullseyes, nameplates, shattered clay targets preserved in resin. The staff here wore embroidered quarter zips and discreet earpieces. Most held clipboards or coffee. None asked who she was. No one needed to. To them, she was already defined. By the coat, the taped case, the silence. A pair of shooters posed for a selfie at the end of the row. Behind them, her figure blurred in the corner of the frame. One added a caption before posting, "Range ghost caught on camera." Laughter bounced from a nearby stairwell. From the deck above, a woman in a black vest leaned on the railing and whispered to a man beside her, "She's still wandering. Just don't let her get near the tower." "Should we tell the marshal? She'll probably wander out when it gets cold." The woman passed beneath them without looking up. Near the main conference door, a large digital screen cycled through donor names in gold text. The sequence moved slowly, each name highlighted, then replaced. Her name wasn't there. Not anymore. Beneath the screen, an older target print had been framed in black. A perfect group, 12 rounds in a pattern no wider than a quarter. No signature, just a line of date and distance below, 1000 mm, standard wind verified. Two shooters looked at it, then past her. One said, "No one's touched that record since 2015. Probably a fluke." She walked on. An older staff member holding a stack of forms brushed past her without apology. A pen slipped from his clipboard and clattered to the floor. He didn't notice. She picked it up, handed it back. He took it, muttered a thanks, and turned away before seeing her face. She moved past the private lockers, glass-doored backlit, each with a name etched into the panel. They gleamed under the LED strips. Custom gear, perfect alignment, quiet pride. She reached the final door at the end of the corridor. A sign read, "Authorized use only Founders Range." No one stopped her. No one knew they should. She stepped through the door, closing quietly behind her. In her coat pocket, a worn utility knife rested against her palm. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. The competition lanes opened just after noon. Sunlight flashed off steel rails and glass panels as elite shooters lined up across the platforms, setting down branded mats and unfolding high-end gear. With the ease of repetition, Pinewood's main viewing deck was already crowded. Defense heirs, venture-backed tacticians, old contractors turned spectators, each settled behind tinted partitions, drinks in hand. Custom rifles glinted like jewelry under the overhead lights. Laughter moved through the upper levels, muted but constant. She walked to the far left station alone. Her mat was plain unmarked, her coat folded neatly beside her boots. Around her, shooters adjusted precision scopes and toggled turret locks, while assistants read out wind data in hushed tones. Everything gleamed: bolts, bipods, nameplates, tablets. By comparison, her rifle case looked out of place. The tape across the edges had dulled and frayed the handle wrapped in faded cloth. Someone tossed a token toward her station. It landed flat on the mat just beside her elbow. Janitor shift scrawled in black marker. No one claimed it, no one apologized. She didn't touch it. A shooter across from her dropped into position, exaggerated the motion, then rolled to her side and groaned for the crowd's benefit. She's gonna eat that recoil. Laughter followed, mostly from the younger competitors. One of them held up a phone screen glowing with a private live stream. In the chat, a line of text scrolled fast. She brought a musket to a laser fight. She opened her case without reacting. The latches gave with a soft crack. Inside the rifle was clean, its wooden stock scratched but cared for. The scope was older, its finish dulled around the rim, but the glass was clear. She laid it out piece by piece, checking each round with steady fingers before aligning them inside a dented tray. Above her lane, the digital scoreboard blinked to life. Mock entry, number 9, no team badge, no name, just the number and an empty profile icon beneath it. On the deck behind her, a woman with a tactical vest leaned on the rail and whispered, "Who let Grandma sign up for open range?" Someone laughed. Someone else hit record. She stayed in place. Her motions were practiced, deliberate. She adjusted her sling, rotated the scope gently in its mount, and tapped once at the bolt. The sound barely registered. With her back flat to the mat, she reached into the side pocket of the case and pulled out a small, worn notebook. She flipped to a marked page. Faded ballistics notations ran in careful columns down the paper, sloped angles, hold points, custom wind calibrations drawn by hand. She scanned it briefly, nodded once, then closed the cover and placed it beside her gear. Down the row, a staff member barked out final checks. Assistants rechecked sensors. One pair joked about needing a broom to sweep up her pride. No one offered help. No marshal approached. She didn't need them. She lowered herself into the prone position, Her left arm braced beneath the stock, her right palm open over the rear grip. Her cheek met the rifle like muscle memory. Her breath slowed, not labored, just quiet. One breath, then another, then stillness. Someone behind her muttered, "She doesn't even have a team patch." Another added, "Bet she's here to ghostwrite the manual." The laughter died more slowly this time. The camera above her, focused in the live stream chat, blinked with gifs and reactions, but her face showed nothing. No acknowledgement, no break. She slid the bolt open, fed the first round in with care. The range display pulsed red then green. The timer started. She exhaled once and waited. The wind shifted as the lineup rotated. From the tower, a smug voice cut through the loudspeaker. Next on deck, mock entry. Number 9, open qualifier 1,000-meter attempt. This should be interesting. The crowd stirred, some leaned in, a few started clapping, slow, exaggerated, theatrical. From the scoring tent, a range tech looked up and smirked. She's really going for it. A man on the benches adjusted his phone angle to keep her in frame. His stream was already titled, "Motel Sniper Goes Long." In the chat, viewers placed bets 10 meters 25, maybe 40 before her first shot missed a betting pool formed in private groups. None of it quiet. She stepped forward without a word. No speech, no request, no delay. Her boots crunched softly over the gravel, the sound faint beneath the laughter and layered voices. One instructor whispered, "Let her take the long shot." Good lesson in wind and ego. Another added, "Make sure the medics are watching. She might throw out her back going prone." Still she walked. The scoreboard above the long-range lane lit up, mock entry number 9. The red digits pulsed in time with the countdown clock, 10 minutes until rotation. The timer started ticking down in the corner of the screen. She approached the line calmly, each step measured. No one offered support. No one asked her if she was ready. From the overhead cameras, her taped rifle case looked out of place next to carbon fiber rigs and precision-grade mounts. One of the interns monitoring the feed zoomed in on the tape and typed a caption for the lower third legacy or lunacy, "You decide." She didn't look up. A staffer on the sideline raised a small silver whistle and gave a single sharp blast. The sound cut through the last of the chatter. Then came the silence. She set her coat beside the mat, laid the case on the gravel, unlatched it, and removed her rifle in one slow, practiced movement. The crowd didn't blink. They wanted the moment. They wanted to say they saw it live. She positioned her mat, pressed her knees down, then shifted into prone like she'd done it 1,000 times in dust, rain, or snow. Not in front of cameras, not for applause, just to shoot. The breeze at her back moved across the high grass, tugging at the edge of the cloth beneath her elbow. The range lights hummed overhead, muted but constant. Far ahead, the 1,000-meter target looked like a postage stamp buried in the earth. She settled in. Cheek to stock, breath to wind, hand to trigger guard. Behind her, someone muttered, "She hasn't fired a single shot yet, and I'm already embarrassed." Another whispered, "I'd pay to see this flop live in slow motion." She adjusted her rear hand slightly, then paused. Breath in, breath out. The gravel beneath her boots didn't shift, the scope didn't twitch. Nothing moved. Not even her name. Only the countdown on the board. 30 seconds now, then 20. She didn't check the time. She knew it. The digital screen blinked to green. The range fell quiet. All that remained was a faint whistle of air and a single unmoving figure pressed flat to the mat, locked in place. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She waited, ready, still steady. The signal flashed green. Timer zeroed, mock entry number 9 lit up in the far left lane. A low mechanical click echoed as the laser tracking system came online. A thin gust cut through the pine above the berms, curling across the long stretch of gravel and steel. Somewhere high on the viewing deck, the last murmur of conversation faded into stillness. She didn't move. Her cheek remained nestled into the worn stock, her breath barely lifting off the surface of the mat. Inhale, exhale, not rushed, not held, the kind of rhythm earned through repetition, not rehearsal. Cold air touched her knuckles, but she didn't flinch. Her fingers stayed loose, aligned, waiting. The first shot came like an afterthought. One breath ended, and the trigger broke. The sound was small compared to the space it filled. No echo, just a crisp report that vanished into the hills beyond the range. The red dot lit up on the target screen. Then, center clean dead heart of the ring. The laughter hadn't returned yet, but no one clapped. A few glances traded between benches. Someone leaned forward. Someone else reached for their drink and set it back down, untouched. She cycled the bolt. Smooth. The second round seated. Her body shifted only enough to reset. The scope barely moved. She made one micro-adjustment to the dial. Nothing showy. Just one click. The breath returned metered and calm as if she were somewhere else entirely. She fired again. Then... Same position, same hole. The screen blinked, then locked a second red dot invisible under the first. In the balcony lounge, a man cleared his throat and said nothing. His phone lay in his hand. Unlocked. Forgotten. A younger shooter at the far bench whispered to his friend and stopped mid-sentence when the third shot landed. Then... There was no delay now between fire and score. The grouping showed no spread. The instructor who had joked about recoil earlier leaned against the support column and watched in silence. His arms folded slowly. She remained flat to the mat. One more round slipped into the chamber with practiced ease. Her elbows didn't shift. Her shoulder held the line. Nothing in her breath betrayed effort. The fourth shot cracked through the cold air. Then... The grouping hadn't widened. Not by a hair. The tech running the scoreboard leaned toward his monitor, blinked, then blinked again. He reset the system camera overlay to confirm. Fifth round loaded. She breathed, let the air settle, made no adjustments. The round fired. Then, the dime-sized cluster on the screen began to pulse red with tracking heat. A spectator near the edge of the viewing deck whispered, "Is that live or a simulation?" Someone else shook their head. No one replied. No one laughed. The staffer holding the printed leaderboard hadn't written anything yet. She stayed in position. Her eyes did not leave the scope. She fired again. Then, the sixth impact fell into the heart of the cluster. By now, the scoreboard operator had stopped toggling between lanes. The feed remained fixed on mock entry number 9. She cycled the bolt again. No extra breath, no hesitation. Seventh shot. Then... The instructor leaned forward, gripping the railing. He hadn't moved in 2 minutes. A younger shooter sat down slowly beside his rig and began repacking his gear without looking up. A woman in a branded jacket pressed record on her phone, but didn't say anything. Eighth shot loaded. Still no pause. She didn't mark her targets. Didn't confirm her score. Didn't celebrate. She simply fired. Then... At the far end of the range, a gust picked up a streamer left by a previous competitor and carried it toward the berm. No one noticed. Ninth shot came without delay. Then... Now the sensors took a full second to lock. The cluster was so dense the laser had to re-register the center line. The tech behind the glass raised his hand and shook his head once. A scoreboard printer clicked to life. She didn't look up. Her hand moved to the final round. She lifted it, set it closed the bolt. Breath again. This time deeper, but only just. The crowd didn't breathe. No noise, no phones, no comment, just the low wind pushing faintly at the mat edge. The 10th shot fired. For 1 second there was no result. Then the board blinked. Then 100. The printer spit out the score. 100. No decimals, no deductions, no delay. She opened the bolt, let the cartridge rest beside the others. She pulled her cheek back from the stock and sat up. Only then did she look ahead. The screen above her station zoomed in. The grouping was so tight it looked printed. The dime-sized cluster glowed red against the paper. Confirmed, verified, stamped. She placed the rifle flat on the mat, laid one hand over the receiver, and closed her eyes for one breath. Behind her, no one moved. A spectator lowered his binoculars and sat back slowly. The instructor turned away, hand still over his mouth. Someone said her name. Someone else wrote it down. But she didn't speak. She gathered her tray, folded her mat, and stood. The wind passed over the range again, quiet now, like it knew what had just happened. Like it understood. She walked off the line and left the silence behind her. The scoreboard still glowed, red digits, clean zeros, 10 shots, 10 perfect scores, 100 across the board. No wind correction needed, no spotter, no tech support, just her. No one had moved. The staffer in charge of posting the scores hadn't written her name yet. His pen hovered over the clipboard like he was waiting for instructions or maybe permission. Across the viewing deck, cameras slowly lowered. A few spectators stood with hands still over their mouths, unsure if what they had seen had really happened. The last traces of mockery had vanished. What remained now was something else. Not silence exactly, but the sound of a room breathing in at once and forgetting how to let it go. At the base of the north wall near the walkway where the donor plaques lined the perimeter, a retired general stepped forward. No one had seen him arrive. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He moved with the quiet ease of someone who belonged in places without needing to prove it. He paused in front of a section that had been covered by a promotional banner, just a standard print ad for a sponsor's tactical gear line bolted casually over the brass. The general studied the bolts for a moment, then reached for the edge of the vinyl and peeled it back. The plaque underneath was polished but unlit. It had been there the whole time. 3 lines, one name. Her name, engraved in brass. No title, no flourish, just the words that mattered. Design lead founding contributor Trajectory Systems and Target Design. A sound rippled through the crowd. It wasn't a gasp, more like an absence, a wave of understanding that struck all at once and moved person to person like a current. On the floor above, a man who had live-streamed her setup earlier lowered his phone. He didn't press, stop, he just let it hang in his hand, forgotten. The woman in tactical gear, who had mimed a collapse before her first shot, now stood at the bench. Her rifle remained untouched, her gloves half pulled on the routine forgotten. Near the tower, the instructor who joked about janitor shifts pressed both palms flat to the desk. He didn't speak. He didn't move. One staffer reached for his camera. He fumbled it. Once, caught it again, then raised it slowly as if unsure whether to record the moment or simply witness it. The screen above the range still showed her final grouping, a red circle no larger than a thumbprint at the exact center of the target. The system had verified it, so had the printer. The evidence was no longer theoretical. It had been archived. She didn't look at the plaque, not yet. She stood at the edge of the mat, her rifle now resting flat against its case. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. In her right hand, half concealed by the cuff of her coat, was a faded ID badge. The laminate had yellowed. The lettering was worn down to a ghosted print, but the barcode was still visible. So was the photo. Younger then, but unmistakably her. A lanyard marked with the founding year curled once around her palm. The general turned away from the plaque and looked directly at her. He didn't salute. He didn't speak. He simply gave a single nod, measured, respectful, absolute. No one clapped, no one dared. She didn't move to the front, didn't raise her voice, didn't correct anyone or explain. She didn't have to. The brass had already spoken. The numbers had spoken. The system she designed had confirmed the outcome with perfect clarity. The scoreboard blinked once more, then held. Perfect 100. Red digits locked. She walked away from the mat one step at a time, her gear packed in silence, not rushed, not delayed, just steady, clean done. Behind her, conversations began again, but they sounded different. Softer, uneven. The tone had shifted. A few people stood up just to sit down again, unsure whether to speak at all. The laughter that had greeted her arrival was gone, replaced by a weight no one wanted to name. She didn't look back. She passed the donor wall without slowing. A few turned to follow her with their eyes, but no one stepped forward. They had already said everything that mattered, and she had answered without a single word. The mat was cleared, the lane swept, the scoreboard reset. But the air still held the shape of her. No one said her name, not aloud, not right away. Yet when people spoke about what they'd seen, they paused before the word shooter, as if the term was too small now, too casual. The number 9 remained in the system for 2 hours longer than it should have, suspended in red on the digital log, untouched by any following entry. By late afternoon, the viewing deck was quiet. Half the lounge had emptied. Those who stayed watched the sky more than the range. Somewhere above the ridgeline, wind crossed the treetops and moved in long ribbons down the slope, cooling the metal rails that still bore the warmth of her last round. They didn't see her leave. No footage caught her crossing the threshold or walking through the gates. No signature on the exit sheet, just a final frame of her, stepping away from the mat, her back turned to the cameras, her coat folded under her arm, and the rifle case taped shut once more. What remained became story. By morning, the group of young shooters who had mocked her from the benches had gone quiet. One of them had deleted his footage. Another had reposted the clip without captions or sound, only a slow pan across her final target, the image looping once before fading to black. Down by the donor wall, someone had removed the banner permanently. Her name was now lit from above with a discreet spotlight. The brass had been polished overnight. The general's visit wasn't recorded, but the staff confirmed he had returned briefly. Just once. Just to stand in front of the plaque and say nothing at all. She didn't return, but others began to appear. A girl in second-hand boots arrived the following weekend for a beginner's course. She said little, kept her hands in her pockets, and waited patiently for her number to be called. Before stepping onto the range, she walked the length of the donor wall, slowly reading each name with care. When she reached the bottom corner, where the concrete path met the brass, she stopped. There set just below the plaque, the initials had been etched by hand into the concrete border of the 1,000-meter line. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just 3 letters pressed deep and clean into the foundation. A range tech said nothing as the girl leaned down and brushed a thumb across them. She smiled once, then rose, stepped to her lane and began to set up. Her shots were wide, scattered, imperfect, but her stance was steady and her breath matched the wind. Someone on the bench behind her whispered that her grouping reminded them of a name they couldn't say out loud. Back in the office, one instructor, quiet older, retrieved the laminated visitor badge from the bottom of the waste bin. He dusted it off with the edge of his sleeve, then slipped it into a sealed display case used for retired patches and range artifacts. No label. Just the plastic and the silence. That winter, Pinewood Training Field's code of conduct was amended. A line was added: "Performance is not determined by pedigree." Underneath it, a single sentence noted the policy was inspired by Entry 9 100-point score recorded and verified. Months later, her name reappeared in an internal systems update. It wasn't announced, it wasn't even required, but in the fine print of the software credits beneath the scoring interface, there it was. Ballistics module read trajectory engine developed and donated. Those who noticed didn't comment. They just kept shooting. They kept learning. And when they reached the 1,000-meter line and dropped to the mat, some of them paused before the first round. Some glanced toward the wall. Some looked down at the initials cut into the concrete. No one said a word. But every breath that followed knew who had been there first. She never asked for recognition. She never raised her voice, and yet with every quiet breath and every perfect shot, she proved that true strength needs no introduction. They mocked her for how she looked, for where she came from, for daring to stand where only the powerful were expected. But she stood anyway. She did not break. And when the truth finally surfaced, it was undeniable. This story is about more than skill. It is about knowing your worth, even when the world forgets your name. It is about the dignity of silence, the resilience of presence, and the kind of legacy that does not seek attention, but commands it. If her story moved, you take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts below or pass it on to someone who's ever been underestimated. And follow for more stories where quiet voices carry the loudest truths.